The 2013 ITU World Triathlon in Kitzbuhel was as hyped a race as we'd seen in years. The course was one triathlon fans had been calling out for, an uphill, mountainous one. As with any ITU event, the field was stacked, and from the start the pace was insanely hot. Richard Varga, arguably triathlon's greatest ever swimmer, went to the front of the race straight away and tried to make the swim miserable for everyone. The swim was only 750 metres long, but the field got strung out quickly and gaps would form. Inside the select lead group were guys like Javier Gomez, Henry Schoeman, Vincent Louis, and the man this video is about, Alistair Brownlee. Onto the bike, and the lead group of 14 would solidify their small gap out of the water to the large chase pack behind. The bike was 11.5 kilometres long in total, short for triathlon standards, but as the athletes took that right-hand turn, they began what made this course so special, the 7.5 kilometre brutally steep mountain climb into T2. Alistair Brownlee led into that corner and started pushing Watts like he was from another planet straight away in an attempt to destroy everyone as early as possible. At the time, and probably still to this day, Alistair Brownlee was the most dominant triathlete the world had ever seen. In 2012, he won the London Olympic Games in the greatest single performance a triathlete had ever displayed, and had been on a run since 2009 where he was almost unbeatable. Alistair had changed the way triathlons were raced. He wanted to be at the front from the start and make the race as hard as possible for everyone in it at all times. He would always go straight to the front of any bike ride and ride an insane tempo that would string the field out, or regularly see him in breakaways because only a select few could ever hold his wheel. This is so crazy because he was also the best runner in the sport, and, historically, the best runners would always sit in and save their legs for the run, but not Alistair. And here in Kitzbuhel, he was going to make a statement like no other the triathlon world had ever seen. At the time, Javier Gomez was the second best triathlete in the sport, and you can see him sitting right on Alistair's wheel trying to hold on. For years these two had been each other's closest rivals, but it had gotten to the point where Javier simply didn't seem to be able to beat Alistair when Alistair showed up to a race fit and healthy. It's also worth noting that in the chase group behind, a young Mario Mola, one of the best climbers and runners in the world, and Olympic bronze medalist Sven Riederer were chasing hard. Alistair had been at the front of the group since they turned onto the mountain, and this was because of the power he was pushing. The lead group of 14 that started the climb had been whittled down to 6 as a result, and, as seemed inevitable, Alistair Brownlee did what only Alistair Brownlee could do at the time, and dropped every single one of the best triathletes on planet Earth. Javier Gomez tried desperately to be the last one to hang on to Alistair's wheel, in an effort that ultimately sabotaged his race. He would end up falling back through the field throughout the bike to finish 13th, which clearly shows that by trying to go with Alistair, his legs imploded, and in the game of hold on to Alistair's wheel or die trying, Javier came off on the wrong side. From the moment Alistair broke the lead group, his gap on everyone in the field only got larger. The pace he was climbing at was like he was a man amongst boys. And once he broke the group, he didn't let up for a single second. He really was here to show everyone who the big dog was. Alistair already had this air of invincibility at the time, like no one else has ever had in the history of triathlon. He was this imposing racer who everyone knew was the best, and what made him so formidable wasn't that he was the fastest, although he was. It was because everyone in the field knew how willing he was to bury himself to win. And today on the mountain in Kitzbuhel, he was taking that to a whole new level. Javier Gomez and Henry Schoeman were the last two to hold off Mario Mola and Sven Riederer, who, outside of Alistair, were the two fastest movers on course at the time. And don't get me wrong, these guys were riding fast. But today was the Alistair Brownlee show. In the lead up to the race, Alistair had openly told everyone he was going to attack from the first kilometre on the climb. And if you could hold on, then good luck to you. This is the unshakable and unbreakable confidence that a person could only ever have from showing up to start lines of the world's biggest races for 4 years straight and time again proving he was near unbeatable. Not only to the world, but to himself. In draft legal short course triathlon, there has always been debate about whether it's the best triathlete who wins or is it just the best swim runner, because you can sit in and draft off other people during the ride. And maybe that's why people were so excited about this course. Maybe that's why there was so much hype. There was nowhere to hide. You didn't get the benefit of drafting on the bike up this climb because it was so steep. On average, it was 10% gradient, but there were pinches between 18 and 24%, which is as steep as any climb you'll ever see in the Tour de France. Alistair's gap to the chasers was always growing. He'd started the climb 10 seconds ahead of the large chase group and ridden by himself the whole way. Sure, he started with a group of 14, but no one in that group got to take a single turn because Alistair went straight to the front and rode them off his wheel one by one. Alistair wasn't using a power meter or a heart rate monitor to judge his effort. It was him, his legs and his bike individual time trialling up this mountain and away from the next best cyclists in World Triathlon who were working together to try and catch him. Honestly, this race was crazy. The swim was only 750 metres and yet Richard Varga had gone to the front and completely obliterated the field with only a select group holding on. Alistair had been one of those guys and was now riding like a man racing to the top of a mountaintop finish in a cycling grand tour. The wildest part is there's still a run to come, which, although shorter than usual, is full of brutal 20% hills that takes them even further up the mountain. The final kilometre of the bike was the steepest on the climb, with a sustained section above 20% gradient. All of the talk going into the race was obviously about this climb, but in particular, there were questions about how the athletes would cope inside this last kilometre of the bike. And yes, you could definitely see how brutal the last kilometre was, but in what by now should be a surprise to no one, Alistair made it look like it wasn't nearly as steep as what it was. Alistair would come into T2 with over a 1 minute gap to Mario Mola, who had ridden away from Sven Riederer in the final kilometre to gain 15 seconds on him in third. Mario Mola weighs about 50 kilos, and he's one of the best runners in the sport, so this course is made for him. Sven is more of a strength triathlete, grinding his way up the climbs, and then a young Henry Schoeman is somewhere in the middle. The run was 2.5 kilometres long, and, as mentioned, this is short for triathlon standards. But it was the rocky terrain and the gradients that made this run so insane. That and the fact that it came off the longest and steepest bike ride in ITU history. The run was flat out of T2, then went down a nasty steep descent for the first 800 metres before getting to a 180-degree turn where the athletes would climb back up 15 to 35% gradients past T2 and continue further up the mountain to the finish line. Javier Gomez, who was the last person to let go of Alistair's wheel on the climb, and Alistair's biggest rival he would ever have in his career, would end up coming into T2 over 3 minutes behind, showing just how badly the effort to hold on to Alistair had hurt him. Alistair could have easily let off the gas leaving T2 onto the run. He had a lead off the bike that no one was ever catching. But that just isn't Alistair Brownlee. Alistair doesn't just race to win, he races to completely dominate people. To prove he's the best. What you've got to remember is that although he had shown today he was the best cyclist in the sport, almost all of Alistair's biggest wins had come off the back of his run, including his Olympic gold medal 1 year earlier, where he ran 29:07 for 10 kilometres, the fastest run in triathlon history. With that being said, Alistair Brownlee did something that only Alistair would do. The penalty box, where you would go if you had to serve a penalty for breaking a rule on course, was located at the top of the climb, right before the finish line. When Alistair got to it, he stepped inside it, turned around, and looked down the mountain at how far back everyone else was. Alistair didn't have a penalty, and he didn't think he did. This was him standing on top of the mountain, looking down and metaphorically telling everyone how much better than them he was. A cheeky grin leaving it, plenty of high-fiving the crowd, and Alistair Brownlee crossed the finish line to win in one of the most impressive displays in triathlon history. To this day, there has never been a triathlete who has been so dominant at their best. And on this day in Kitzbuhel, on one of the most iconic race courses triathlon has ever seen, Alistair Brownlee showed everybody he was the best. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, please leave a like on this video and subscribe to the channel. I'll be releasing one video per week going over a historic moment in triathlon just like this, so keep an eye out.